Hi, welcome everyone. In this video, we are going to talk about AWS IAM role with hands-on demonstration. Okay, before we go on, let me explain what is IAM role. IAM role is basically an entity. It's also part of AWS IAM Identity and Access Management component, whereby you can assume a temporary role or gain access to specific resources within AWS. Okay, compared to IAM users, roles you don't need to have permanent credentials. By that we mean you don't need to manage username and password. Okay, by instead you are being given temporary security credentials. By that is secret key, access key, and with some session token, okay, for you to be able to assume a role. Right. So on here, as you can see, it says you. What is the you? Okay, you can assume a role. The you can be many entities or identities. So some of the entities, as you can see here, are those entities that can assume a role. Example is a service. What is a service? These are what AWS provide for you. Okay. For example, for compute service, EC2 instance can assume a role. There are other services that can assume a role. AWS users, by that you yourself or any principal can be classified as a user. Federated identities can also assume a role, like Google, SAML, and OIDC can also be federated. Okay, and also the last one is an external account. Basically, if you have two accounts, you want one account to be able to have access to a resource within a different account. You can assume a role from one account to another account. That is the external account. So with this, you do not need to have a long-term credentials to manage. All it needs to happen is you create a role which can be assumed by any entities. This role will have what we call policy attached to it. The policy will determine what actions you can take against what resources or services. These permissions or this policy will be analyzed and permission will be granted. Okay, again, if you're not too sure about what policy is about, I have a separate video. Please subscribe to my channel and you'll be able to get notified or be able to look at my old videos and be able to understand and follow through this recordings or this video. Right. So on a high level, this is it. Let's actually do the practical side of things. And whilst we are doing it, again, I'll recycle back into this explanation for you to be able to understand it more. But I believe the practical side of things is much more important. So you should be able to follow through and also do some on your own. So let's move on to my management console. I'm going to log in as a user, gain authenticated, and gain autolive. So here is it in my management console. As you can see, I'm straight away into my IAM. Okay. Again, IAM has various components. One of them, which we are much interested, is the role. We are going to create a role, but let's put ourselves a scenario what we are going to achieve, right? So imagine you are working or being tasked to create EC2 instance. This EC2 instance is just a server, it's just a virtual server. This server needs to have access to S3 bucket to be able to to be able to analyze or manipulate this object or this file within the bucket. If you're not too sure about S3, again, there will be a separate video that we're going to explain. But for this purpose, it's just follow through. The bucket is just a container where we put files, video recording, basically everything you can put in the bucket, and that you can give access to this bucket for any services or users to be able to access the bucket and manipulate the object. Right, so the instance needs to have access to the bucket to be able to do what it needs to do. So let's go in here to the role. Again, this explains what the role is about, but we are going to create our own role. So we click on the create. Okay, so what are we doing? What do we need this role for? We want the role to be assumed by an entity, which is AWS EC2 instance. Okay, it can be assumed by another account, a web identity, Some more custom trust policy can also be provisioned. By that we mean a principal can be given access to assume this role and perform what it needs to do. So basically, who needs to have permission to be assume a role to do what it needs to do temporarily. Okay, so we're going to pick EC2 as our use case. Okay, there are various services you can think of. So by that, we are interested in the EC2. We go next, and what we need to do here, these are what we call policies. So the policy, when analyzed, will get permissions. These are what we call managed policy. Again, I've explained in a separate video what is a managed policy, what is custom policy, and what is inline policy. Please follow that and you'll be able to get that videos as well. Subscribe to this. So what I will say, we are not going to create or attach any custom policy. We have our own policy that we created. Again, in a separate video, we did that. So that policy, we manage it. So it's custom manage. Okay, customer manage. So that policy was S3 to do with. Let's see. Yeah, that's the one. Again, let's open the plus and go inside what this policy is about. So we are going to take action on S3. Yeah. What action are we taking? List all bucket, get the content of the bucket, that is the object within the bucket, put object. We can delete them and then list bucket. Okay. On what? Okay. We are going to allow on this resource. So the resource is this bucket name. Okay. I'll go to my S3 bucket and show you where the bucket is. Okay, so this is what we need. We need access to this bucket to be able to perform these functions. Okay, so let me close it and then go next because we are creating a role. Okay, and we are adding permission to the role. So click onto that and then we give the policy a name. So let's call it dev instance role, something like that. Okay, you can describe it if you want, and this is what we call the trusted entity. Basically, who is allowed to assume a role. Okay, the who is the principal or the entity or the identity, which is a service, and that is going to be EC2. It's going to perform STS assume a role, is going to assume a role, and the permission is what we are going to give. Where is the permission? I think we didn't select the permission. So let's go back because the permission should have been here. We didn't select it. Let's go back one step and select our custom policy again, which was S3. Okay, where's S3 actually? This is the one. We should have checked the box to select. So good idea. Once you're going through, you check what is happening. We go next, which is where we were. So this assume role by EC2 instance will have this permission, which we've already looked at. Okay, once you are happy, you go create role. Okay, the role is created, so which we call it dev instance role. This is the role. Okay, let's explain the role again. Right, we have the role ARN, Amazon resource name, that's the name of it. Okay, this is the profile ARN. Okay, so maximum session, basically, like we say, it's an assumed role, it's temporary, and it's a session token that you get. On maximum level, you can assume it for an hour. Okay, that's the maximum duration. What is the entity that is going to assume this role for an hour? We go to the trusted relationship that will have the trusted entity. Okay, so the trusted entity is a principal and is allowed to perform this action, which is STS assume a role. What is the service that is going to do it, or who is going to do it? It's EC2 instance. Okay, that's the name. Okay, what is he going to do? is going to perform this function or this permission under this role, sorry, under this policy. Okay, it's going to list this all the actions on this particular resource. Okay, that's it. The role is there, it's waiting to be assumed. Right, now we have provisioned our EC2 instance, which is already running. Again, there will be a separate video about AWS services and compute. Particularly, we will pay attention to EC2. But for now, again, just follow through the video. Our main idea here is for you to understand IAM roles. So the instance or the machine is going to assume a role to list bucket to basically manipulate the object within the bucket. Happy days. Right, so what we will do is to find our EC2, which is compute. Open a new tab here, go on here, click on the instance running, and then we got this instance running. I'll check the box and I'll go to action. What I'm going to do is I'm going to attach the role to this Bastion instance or the EC2. That's the name of it. So we'll go to action, and what I need to do is to go to security. Remember, go to security, and I'm modifying IAM role. Okay, for now it has no role being attached. We are going to find our role, the one we created, which was dev instance role. Okay, and we are going to update this role. Okay, update it. Therefore the instance have a role that it can assume at any point in time, but remember that role has a policy attached, and that is to access S3. Let's connect to the instance. Okay, we're going to use instant connect. We connect. Okay, give it a second. Right, so we are in. Okay, so let's try some. Let me have what I have ready created. I've got some what we call the folder here, no problem, but we are interested in bucket. I want to list the bucket. What bucket do I want to list? Remember, we know the name of the bucket. Let's look for it. Actually, let me go back here. What's it here? Let me find the bucket here. So S3, opening a new tab, show you the bucket we were talking about. So that was a bucket name as you saw it in the policy. So if I click in this bucket, oh no, it's a wrong bucket. Go back. That is my AWS all principal bucket. It has a content or object in it, k8.png. Let me grab the name of the bucket. Okay, and I want the EC2 instance. Come back here. All I will need to do is I will say AWS, it's a command, S3. I'm looking for S3. Okay, what do I need to do? I want to list, which is ls. What am I going to list? A bucket. So which is a bucket name. So I'll prefix with S3 colon / and the name of the bucket, which is the one I copied. So I'll paste it here. Okay, I want to list the content of the bucket. Okay, and this is what you see. Yeah, this is the content of the bucket, and it's been given a tag basically to identify when it was listed. But the main file is this one, which I show you here. This is the content. So the instance is able to list the bucket. What about if you want to download the bucket? Basically, we can manipulate the object within the bucket. So we will say this. Okay, we will say AWS S3. Okay, again, this time we are not listing, we are going to copy. Okay, copy is another form you're going to download. So we're going to copy it onto our folder here, which is copy. What are we copying? We're going to copy S3 again, colon, / okay, the name of the bucket, let's put it here. Okay, and what we want to do is, where do we want to copy this bucket to? Where do we want to download to? So we say space and put period, or your present working directory. Okay, and when you do that, you do it recursively. By that I mean copy all the content of the bucket and put it in my current directory. So how do we say that? We will say hyphen hyphen recursive. So recursive. Okay, so you're going to copy the content of the bucket and everything within it into our current folder. So we go enter, and can you see download, and then it gives you all the full path and where it's going to copy it. So copy to your present folder, and then this is the name of it. So now if I do ls, you can see I've got the folder and the object that I copied. All right, so this is it. I can remove it, I can manipulate this object, no problem. But quickly, I'm going to remove the row. So we have this session for an hour, so we assume this row for an hour as you saw it. But what I want to do is, I'm going to detach the row and see what's going to happen. Okay, so go back to the row, the instance actually, come back to instance here, and then go back to the action again, security, modified, and then let's remove and give it no IAM role, and then update. Okay, what I need to do is type detach, and then detach this row from the instance. Okay, so eventual consistency, I've just detached it straight away. When I go back to the instance, I should not have access. So now if I do AWS S3 again, okay, ls, I'm listing the bucket again, S3 colon / this bucket, and then I have unable to locate credentials. Okay, basically for you to be able to do it, you should have, let's say, secret key and access key, or password and username to be able to access. To that end, you need to configure it here. But we don't want to be managing the password, we don't want to be hard coding. Okay, so we ignore that. That is why we say on here. Okay, so just temporary assume for an hour. We're able to assume as S3, assume a role as EC2 to have access to S3, but we are not managing any long-term credentials. Okay, that is what we mean. And we are not using any secret key and access key. That is what it's asking for. We are only using session token. Okay, session token, and we are not managing this. AWS is managing this for us. So if I come back in here, this is what it say. Okay, so uh, that is the end of the video, I should say, right? And I hope you learned something. Please comment, subscribe to this channel, and also like them, share them, and I'm happy to do more of such video. Happy learning, and see you in our next video. Thank you very much. Bye bye.